The room was supposed to be routine. Another press conference. Another post-match media session. Cameras aligned. Microphones angled forward. Reporters scanning their notes, waiting for predictable answers from one of the most dominant players in women's tennis. Aryna Sabalenka had done this hundreds of times before. Confident. Direct. Unapologetically powerful. But then the question came. Not about her serve, not about her forehand winners, not about her title chances. It was about Eala. There was a brief pause, subtle, almost invisible to the casual viewer. But in elite sport, pauses speak. The reporter didn't phrase it dramatically. No loaded language. No confrontation. Just a simple inquiry about the possibility of a rematch against the fast-rising Filipina star who has suddenly entered conversations once reserved only for established elites. And in that moment, something shifted. Because this was no longer a theoretical matchup buried in a future draw projection. It was a scenario that felt real. Earned. Increasingly probable. Sabalenka leaned back slightly before answering. Not dismissive. Not irritated. Measured. Her expression stayed composed, but her tone carried weight. The kind of tone champions use when they recognize that a name is no longer just noise, it's competition. For years, questions about young players followed a familiar pattern. Do you see potential? She's talented, right? Could she be dangerous one day? But this felt different. The framing wasn't about potential. It was about readiness. And that distinction matters. Because in professional tennis, there is a massive gap between being promising and being threatening. Sabalenka understands that better than anyone. She climbed that same ladder herself. She knows what it means when the media stops asking if someone is good and starts asking when they'll collide with the best. When she responded, her words were diplomatic, respectful, strategic. She acknowledged Eala's improvement. She mentioned growth. She referenced hard work. The standard language of elite courtesy. But what stood out wasn't what she said. It was what she didn't say. There was no dismissal. No subtle undermining. No reminder of ranking gaps. No assertion of dominance. Just calm recognition. For Filipino fans watching that clip circulate online, the moment felt bigger than a press conference answer. It felt like validation. For months, support had been building. Rankings rising. Crowds growing louder. Analysts beginning to mention Eala's name in serious contexts. Not as a novelty. Not as a feel-good story. But as a competitor. And here was a world-class champion being asked, publicly, about facing her again. That alone signals status. In tennis, respect is rarely loud. It's coded. It's indirect. It's revealed through preparation and tone. Sabalenka didn't overreact. She didn't dramatize. Champions don't. But she didn't brush it aside either. And that balance tells its own story. Because at the highest level of sport, you don't prepare emotionally for names that don't matter. You prepare for threats. The air in that press room carried an unspoken understanding. This wasn't about hype. It wasn't about social media buzz. It wasn't about patriotic energy or crowd noise. It was about trajectory. Eala's rise has reached a point where even the elite are being asked to account for it. And when a dominant player is asked about you by name, in a serious competitive context, you've crossed a line. A line between interesting and inevitable. The clip spread quickly across tennis communities. Filipino supporters dissected every frame. Body language analysts chimed in. Comment sections lit up with pride and anticipation. But beneath all the excitement was a deeper question. Did Sabalenka see what everyone else is beginning to see? Because champions don't just respond to questions. They respond to patterns. And patterns suggest something is building. This wasn't just a press conference exchange. It was the moment the conversation officially changed. And if this is how the tension begins, quietly, calmly, measured, then what happens when they stand on opposite sides of a net again? That question now lingers in every draw announcement. And the silence before her answer may have been the loudest signal of all. For a long time, the idea of a Sabalenka, Eala rematch lived in the world of what if. It was the kind of matchup fans discussed in comment sections. The kind of projection analysts mention cautiously, always adding the same disclaimer. She's still developing. But something has changed. This is no longer about imagination. It's about positioning. Because in professional tennis, rematches don't happen because fans want them. They happen because rankings force them. And Eala's ranking is no longer static. Every tournament, every round advanced, every upset victory has quietly shifted the math. In the WTA system, ranking isn't symbolic, it's structural. It determines draws, seedings, and collision paths. When a player climbs high enough, meetings with top seeds stop being rare and start being statistically inevitable. That's where this conversation moved from fantasy to probability. Eala's recent performances weren't just emotional wins for her supporters. They were technical statements. Improved shot selection, better serve consistency, composure under pressure, tactical patience against higher-ranked opponents. These aren't viral highlights. They're progression markers. And progression is what turns a rising player into a legitimate draw threat. For months, some critics dismissed the hype as social media amplified enthusiasm, a national movement rallying around hope. But hope alone doesn't win matches at the WTA 1000 level. Hope doesn't close out tight sets against experienced opponents. Hope doesn't maintain ranking momentum across multiple tournaments. Consistency does. And that's what began to alter the narrative. The more matches she won, the more stable her ranking climb became. The more stable the ranking, the more realistic the draw scenarios. Suddenly, projections weren't far-fetched. They were bracket-based. If Eala enters a tournament seeded within striking range of the top 8, then mathematically, a quarterfinal or round of 16 meeting with someone like Sabalenka becomes part of the draw architecture. That's not hype. That's structure. And structure is what makes elite players pay attention. For Sabalenka, preparing for tournaments means studying possible opponents. Her team doesn't just analyze current threats, they track rising trajectories. Who is improving? Who is adjusting tactically? Who is building confidence? Because confidence in tennis is dangerous. A lower-ranked player with hesitation can be overpowered. A lower-ranked player with belief becomes unpredictable. Eala's growth isn't just about ranking points. It's about composure. Her body language has evolved. Her shot tolerance has strengthened. She absorbs pressure better than before. That evolution is visible to professionals long before it becomes obvious to casual fans. And then there's the crowd factor. In recent tournaments, the volume around Eala matches has grown noticeably louder. Filipino flags in the stands. Diaspora communities showing up in force. Social media engagement surging after each match. Crowd energy doesn't change rankings, but it changes atmosphere. And atmosphere influences momentum. For an established champion like Sabalenka, hostile or emotionally charged environments aren't unfamiliar. But they're variables. A lower-ranked player with hesitation can be overpowered. A lower-ranked player with belief becomes unpredictable. Eala's growth isn't just about ranking points. It's about composure. Her body language has evolved. Her shot tolerance has strengthened. She absorbs pressure better than before. That evolution is visible to professionals long before it becomes obvious to casual fans. And then there's the crowd factor. In recent tournaments, the volume around Eala matches has grown noticeably louder. Filipino flags in the stands. Diaspora communities showing up in force. Social media engagement surging after each match. Crowd energy doesn't change rankings, but it changes atmosphere. And atmosphere influences momentum. For an established champion like Sabalenka, hostile or emotionally charged environments aren't unfamiliar. But they are variables. And elite preparation means acknowledging every variable. The rematch question surfaced not because it's dramatic. It surfaced because trajectories are converging. This isn't a storyline manufactured for clicks. It's the natural byproduct of two competitive arcs moving toward intersection. One player defending dominance, another climbing toward contention. And when those arcs approach each other in the rankings, the tennis world adjusts its language. You can feel it in commentary tone, in analyst discussions, in draw previews. The phrase shifts from if they ever meet to when they meet again. That shift may sound subtle, but in professional sport, it signals legitimacy. For Filipino supporters, this validation feels monumental. For years, representation on the highest stages of global tennis felt distant. Now, the possibility of a rematch against a reigning powerhouse isn't framed as a dream. It's framed as a test. And tests are earned. Sabalenka knows this. She's faced emerging players before. Some fade. Some plateau. A few accelerate. The question now isn't whether Eala belongs in the conversation. It's whether the timing of that conversation signals something bigger. Because when rematches stop being speculative and start being bracket realistic, the pressure shifts. And the tennis world quietly prepares. The fantasy phase is over. Now, it's about inevitability. And inevitability changes how champions respond. At the highest level of sport, words are never random. They are measured, filtered, strategically delivered. So when Aryna Sabalenka addressed the possibility of facing Eala again, it wasn't just about what she said, it was about how she said it. Champions understand the weight of acknowledgement. They know that a single dismissive sentence can become motivation fuel. They know that excessive praise can inflate expectations. And they know that neutrality can sometimes speak louder than bold declarations. Sabalenka chose neutrality. But it wasn't casual neutrality. It was calculated. Her response carried professionalism, the kind elite athletes use when recognizing an opponent who is no longer theoretical. She spoke of improvement. She referenced development. She framed Eala as someone working hard and earning results. Simple phrases on the surface. But layered underneath was something important: recognition without exaggeration. In tennis, disrespect is rarely loud. It's subtle. It comes in the form of tone, phrasing, or comparison. A champion might casually remind the room of ranking gaps. They might emphasize experience. They might downplay consistency. Sabalenka did none of that. And that absence is revealing. Because established champions do not grant verbal legitimacy lightly. They have seen waves of emerging players before. Teen sensations. One-tournament wonders. Social media darlings. Most of them disappear from top-tier conversation within a season. So, when a dominant player avoids dismissal, it suggests they see substance. Body language experts often note microsignals, posture shifts, eye contact changes, slight pauses before answering. During that press moment, Sabalenka didn't laugh the question off. She didn't rush through it. She answered directly. Calm. Controlled. Focused. That composure reflects experience. But it also reflects awareness. Because champions prepare for what's probable, not what's popular. And the fact that the question was asked at all means something structural has shifted. It means tournament organizers, media members, and analysts now view this matchup as competitive content, not promotional filler. For Filipino fans watching the clip circulate online, the interpretation felt emotional. Some saw respect. Others saw subtle tension. Many saw validation. But strip away emotion and what remains is competitive psychology. Sabalenka understands pressure differently than most players. She lives inside it. Every tournament, she enters as a favorite. Every match, she carries the burden of expectation. She has learned to protect her focus from distractions. So when she addresses a rising opponent, she does so in a way that maintains control of the narrative. Her words didn't inflate the storyline, but they didn't shrink it either. That balance is intentional. Because in tennis, perception can alter preparation. If a champion publicly minimizes an opponent and then loses, the narrative turns brutal. If they overpraise an opponent and win comfortably, the build-up looks exaggerated. So elite players stay centered. And that's exactly what Sabalenka did. Yet within that center lies an interesting tension. She acknowledged growth. And growth implies progression. Progression implies future collision. No champion prepares for yesterday's version of a player. They prepare for tomorrow's. Which means her team will analyze footage, study tendencies, evaluate improvements, identify patterns. That doesn't happen for novelty matchups. It happens for credible ones. The tone she used wasn't fearful. Champions rarely show fear publicly. But it wasn't indifferent either. It was attentive. And attentiveness is respect in elite competition. For Eala, whether she hears those words directly or not, the message is clear. She is being evaluated at the highest level. Not as a story, not as a symbol, but as a competitor. And that transformation from inspirational narrative to tactical consideration is one of the hardest transitions in professional sport. The silence before Sabalenka answered may have lasted only a second, but that second represented something larger. A recalibration. The conversation is no longer about potential. It's about readiness. And when a reigning force speaks carefully about a rising challenger, it signals something subtle but powerful. The hierarchy has taken notice. The question now isn't whether they'll meet again. It's how both sides are preparing for that moment. Because behind every calm press conference answer lies a deeper competitive truth. Champions don't react emotionally. They respond strategically. And strategic responses mean the matchup matters. Before the press conferences, before the ranking projections, before her name began circulating in conversations alongside Grand Slam champions, there was Manila. There were early mornings, empty courts, quiet repetitions. Long before global media asked Aryna Sabalenka about a potential rematch, Eala was building something far less visible, a foundation. For many Filipino fans, her rise feels sudden. The headlines, the upsets, the viral moments. But in reality, this trajectory began years ago, in disciplined obscurity. Junior tournaments,